go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of ASCII Anything presented by Motion Consulting. I'm your host, Angel Leon, Motion's Director of Personnel. We're glad that you're with us for this episode of ASCII Anything because today we're going to be discussing automation and leadership with our very own Melinda Lauder, Motion's Director of Marketing and Sales. As technology continues to evolve, automation is reshaping the way we work, streamlining processes and driving efficiency. But what does that mean for leaders? How do we navigate the challenge of integrating automation while keeping teams engaged, motivated, and adaptable? In this episode, we'll explore the impact of automation on leadership, discuss strategies for leading through change, and examine how leaders can leverage technology to enhance, not replace, human potential. Let's bring in our guest, Melinda Lauder. Welcome back to Ask Anything, Melinda. How are you?
Hi, I'm happy to be back. It's good to see you guys again. Producer Brian on Hell.
It's always good to have you back. We certainly, if you don't know, now you know. Brian, what's the nickname for Melinda, please?
Podcast mom.
I'm the podcast mom. I don't mind.
All right, so leading a team and being a manager in today's world isn't easy. It often feels like managers are the punchline of every joke. Everyone resists being managed, yet leadership is essential to keeping things moving forward. Now, with remote work making communication and connection even more challenging, the role of a leader has become even more complex. So, how has that shift affected you as a leader?
I mean, I feel that, like, that whole statement, this whole topic, like, I feel it in my heart. One of my favorite quotes when I was thinking about this episode and this topic, I ran across this doing some research. It's from Peter Drucker. I really don't know much about Peter, but he said these wise words. Only three things happen naturally in organizations: friction, confusion, and underperformance. Everything else requires leadership. And I feel that too. I mean, for some reason, just being with other people, having to accomplish work with other people, everybody having conflicting personalities, competing priorities, unrealistic expectations. It's such a challenge. In my personal management journey, like, I had things that I was not good at and I had to work on. Like, I had to get comfortable with conflict, right? You have to get comfortable being uncomfortable and having the hard conversations. I know you know that on Hell in your role.
Very much.
But, I had to build trust with a varied group of people who consider that word to mean very different things. You want to make sure everybody feels heard. You want to realize everybody's expectations, or try to, and you have to take time to do the planning. I mean, if you are the leader, you need to take time to step away and take the 20,000 foot view of things and do this overarching thing so that there's goals and there's plans and so that there's processes for the team. And again, all that gets made fun of. Oh, you think back to the old movies, do the TPS reports, right?
Yes.
Nobody wants to do those things, those process things, but I've seen, work try to get done without processes, and it could be very challenging, and it's frustrating for the workers and the leaders. So all of this is happening all while the world is whirling around the sun at 30 kilometers a second. And, it just feels like that's getting faster. Doesn't it feel like the world's just getting faster? And, me, myself, I'm not perfect. I have my own shortcomings. I'm not going to be perfect in every interaction with my people. And I have my own insecurities that I have to deal with when things happen. And all my problems and failures, not everything I suggest works. So, I mean, I've only been in a management type of leadership role for a few years. And I mean, I was just reeling. I didn't know what to do with all of this when I first started in a leadership type position.
To go back to something you just said, as leaders, people think that, they might have all the answers. They might know everything. We don't. As you mentioned, we all have our insecurities. We all have our own problems and failures. I mean, I think back at my leadership journey throughout my career and the 20 some odd years that I've been a professional, and it was a struggle. I mean, from the very first one, I didn't know how to manage people. I had good teachers. I had good people that actually taught me very well. From a very young age, I was lucky enough to have the very first HR director that I had was and still is somebody that he's since passed, unfortunately, but it's still somebody that I have at the forefront of my profession and of my own professional behavior, because he
Yeah.
taught me a lot. He showed me how to treat people and why this profession matters and why everyone around us matters. Doesn't matter what they're doing, what their role is within the organization. Everyone has equal footing when it comes to human resources, in my case. So learning from that and then putting that into action years later, when I became a manager, I actually became an acting manager under him while my supervisor went on maternity leave for 4 months. So there I was a young 21, 22-year-old for the first time being a manager of people that were twice as old as me, or had either
Oh my God.
twice as old, as much experience as me, or three times. I had one person who actually had 30 years on the job, and here I was,
Oh my
somebody who had
God.
just 3 years of experience managing this person that had three times my experience. I mean, 10 times,
Talk
I'm sorry.
about insecurity. I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly. But to his credit, I had him on my hip basically at all times. I had a good fallback leader that I could go back to and talk to him and just kind of see how to relate and how to be a better acting leader for those people. And my boss came back, everything came back to normal, everything was great. And then about a year and a half later, she got pregnant again. So then,
here we go again.
exactly. And
Uncomfortable being uncomfortable.
exactly. By that second acting stint, I felt more prepared because I had that first awkward experience for those first 4 months. But now I feel like I had the right tools and I had the right mentality to take on those challenges. And then when I officially became a leader, I felt I was prepared. I was prepared because the roles that I was managing, I had done previously. So that was really that was besides the acting managing, this was my first real like title position. And so it was interesting because I tell the story about how a lot of my employees then, you could see the distrust because I was new. I was new to where I was at, which was actually here when I moved to Indiana. Nobody knew me. So everybody kind of saw me side-eyed because here's this guy that's coming. I was coming from overseas. Like nobody knew who I was. Like I'm not from the area. All the people are here local. So they're like, what is this guy's deal? Like, where is he coming from? Like, why does he have the credentials to be our new supervisor? And
Sure.
within 2 months, I had them all like, oh my God, like this guy is the greatest. But it wasn't because I was the greatest, it's because I was actually demonstrating that, hey, I know what you're going through. Like, I know what you're doing. I did this.
Yeah.
And here are the best ways that you could possibly do this. Now, you do you. Like, I'm going to be there along the
Sure.
way, but I'll give you your space to grow on your position. But these are the things that I did that make me successful. And
Yeah.
they all bought in, enjoyed it, and we made a good report. And that just launched what I thought at the time was a very good way to start in an official managing capacity.
Yeah. No, I mean, that sounds good. And there's nothing like having a great mentor or a great manager or just somebody who does things the right way who you can learn from. I mean, there's something to be said for having a manager who does things the wrong way and you learn what not to do. But I would much rather have somebody, doing things the right way. I mean, I've had some great managers over the year. I mean, we didn't really say what I did, but I work in marketing and sales. I'm the director of marketing and sales. So I came up through marketing, that side. And I've had a lot of great managers and bosses over the years. I mean, some of them just taught me specific skills. Some of them taught me to be thoughtful and have that like leadership type of view and to think about things and to not be reactive. Some of them taught me patience. Some of them taught me to take a chance, like don't play it safe, like do it. Like, I know my marketing team, one of our big things is ask forgiveness, not permission, because we take a chance on things. I wouldn't follow that, into the ground, but that's our general thing. Like, you get nothing that you don't ask for. You take a chance on stuff.
Right.
We hire people who are capable and we hire people who are intelligent. And if they have an idea or an intuition, I want them to follow it. And I get
Yeah.
that from it trickle. This is a trickle down that actually does
Right.
work. Melinda sets that tone. I reinforce it as the marketing team manager with our other marketing people to really reinforce that. Just if you have an idea, let's pursue it. Let's see where it goes. It might go nowhere.
Yeah.
But you know it will definitely go nowhere? Doing nothing, trying nothing. So
Yeah.
I was going to tee up the ask forgiveness, not permission, Melinda, but went there anyway. And and let's have a moment of silence and deep sympathy for Melinda, who is my boss and has to direct and interact with me on a constant and on a very regular basis. So pray to the gods of
You
patience that they deliver daily.
you can send your wishes my way. I learned that though from that. I wasn't the first person to come up with that. That's just, I was on a photo shoot at a place I used to work. He wasn't my boss, but he was a very older, experienced photographer that we were working with that we had on the shoot. I was very young art director, and we wanted to shoot in front of this. It was like a golf course, but it wasn't just a golf course. It was like a golf club, right? They had beautiful like flowers and stuff in front. And we wanted to shoot there. And I was like, oh, well, let me go up and let me see if I can talk to the secretary or, the green. He's like, by the time you do that, we'll be done. Just stay right there. And then we just did it. We didn't even, he goes, if they come up and ask us to leave, we'll deal with it. And I was like, okay, well, that worked, because I was going to go full permission rule follower on it. But, we just needed a few shots. And by the time they even noticed we were there, we were gone. So you're talking about mentors. I learned something from everybody. And I guess I'm a big observer though. Like I observe and notice things and watch people and watch how things are done. But, even that, like learning from the people in my past, like some of those lessons pass forward. But like, it's been 30 years for me doing this stuff. Like that, literally that incident I talked about at the golf course, that was almost 30 years ago that happened. And if you think about the world back then and the world now, those are two different worlds. Things are different. I mean, you can't say they're not. It's more different now than it was 30 years before that compared to that time. It's just crazy. I remember the first time I ever saw a web page load in a web browser. And it was not on a personal computer. I did not own a personal computer. Like what people who were rich owned personal computers back then. And I remember watching it load line by line on the browser. And because somebody had told me, said, there's this new thing and you need to see it. And you need to go to the library and see it. And I went to the journalism library at Ball State in the West Quad building and waited for the computer. And yeah, chirp, chirp for Ball State. So
Chirp,
waited
chirp.
for the computer. Somebody got done with it. And I went there and they taught me how to bring something up and watched it load. I didn't get it. I didn't get what this whole internet thing was at the time. But that world, that's different than this world. Which brings me to my next quote I came across in my research, which is from Plato. So we're going deep, philosophical, talk about old. But he said, don't force your children into your ways, for they were created for a time different than yours, right? Even though we learn these lessons and we know these things, the world's different. It's just different. It's about embracing change and adapting to it. Pivot as they say on Friends, and adapt. And I mean, it's not bad that it's changed. I mean, look at the technology we have available to us today and the things that we didn't have back then.
It's amazing. And let me go back to something you said about the webpage. The first webpage I saw in the late 90s was Yahoo. Yeah, that was the first webpage I saw. I remember I don't remember, it was 1995, 96. I can't remember. I was in school. I was in junior high, I think I was.
Yeah.
Or I was in high school. No, I was in high school. And I created my first email with yahoo.com. So I still use it. I still have it.
Wow.
I remember. Yeah. So yeah, shout out to Yahoo. But you're right. I mean, leading a team in today's world is more complicated than ever. Expectations are higher, work environments are more flexible, and communication is more digital. At the same time, the tools we have as managers are better than they were 30, 20, or even 10 years ago. I mean, 10 years ago in the HR spectrum, I don't recall some of the tools that I have now to use that we have today. I mean, even just in general, HRISs and performance management software, back then was very different. Now we have software that give us real-time insights into our teams, collaboration tools like Slack and Microsoft Teams that keep us connected across distances, and AI-driven automation takes administrative burdens off of our plates. So while leadership is evolving, so are the resources around it and how we use it to navigate it. So given all these changes, how has this shift affected you as a leader?
Going back to when I said, I first took a leadership role and I was overwhelmed, right? It was crazy. So I had to get control. I had to get control of all the things going on around me, make order out of the chaos. And so I started looking for ways to do that, and why not use technology? I mean, technology's progressed. Certainly there's a way to use it for me. I'm always very early adopter type of person with technology. I'm not afraid of AI, the stuff that's coming out now. I totally embrace that. And I love what it's doing for the marketing atmosphere. But for me, I have another problem, is that I'm a control freak. I'm a reformed control freak perfectionist, is what I like to say. Reformed because I'm letting go of it, right? I'm letting go of things. I'm doing better at letting go of things. But, doing automation, using these technologies to do stuff like that, it's giving up control, right? I'm uncomfortable with it. It's just standard stuff. I used to act like it could only be done right if I did it right. You can ask my current manager, like, she sees that I struggle with it. Like, I'll say something like, okay, I'll go do that, or I'll take care of that. And I could just see the look in her eyes, and she's like, your team can do that. To just assign that to your team. Stop telling me you're going to do it. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Okay, I'm doing better, right? It's a constant, like, you always have to work on you. I always have to work on me. And I have good people, totally trust them to do anything. But, as far as automation goes, that's not my people. Automation is an app or something that's doing it for you, right? And so that's different than trusting my people to do something. I trust my people. I work with them, and, I can talk to them about it and explain it to them. But automation felt different. Like, that's trusting some sort of AI robot or just a tool or an app to do something that I would normally do. And that type of giving up of that control was just hard for me. But what I kind of learned, or what I kind of figured out, was automation is about letting something else take an action for you, right? Mm-hmm. I said, take an action for you, not make a decision for you, right?
Yeah.
It's about letting something else do the action, the boring action, the action that wastes my time and that isn't thoughtful or thought-provoking or that doesn't take anything. I make the decisions. I can have other things take the actions for me and save my time.
I can relate to that, because in my world, speaking of HRISs and our software that we use, so I'll give a very boring but very good example of what it does for us. Open enrollment. Every organization that offers benefits, et cetera, has their own open enrollment. And if they have a HR software system, they're more than likely going to do it through that HR software system. So our current system basically allows us to automate everything from bringing past year elections to then commuting those with the new elections, and then providing each employee a screen where they can see, this is what you have, this is what's going to look like next year after you make your elections, and then boom, all you do, we call it passive enrollment. People go through there. If nothing changes, they just click yes, 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 and it goes.
Yeah.
In the background for us, it's easier because now we're just basically, we go basically click 3 different areas and boom, we have it ready. It's probably a little bit more convoluted than that, but
sure.
Because we have to create this spreadsheet every year, we have to input rates and things like that. That's the cost to the company, et cetera. That's a little bit more complicated, but it's still something that you have to do, because there's no automation for that, because every year rates change. So you have to change those rates regardless. But
and you have to make decisions about what you're going to use, about what companies you're going to go with, what that cost is. So That's the
Yes.
thoughtful part of it.
Exactly. So as long as you're either staying with the same company or even if you're changing companies, you still have to do those decisions and you still have to input those. But after you're done with those decisions and that input, everything else just flows into the system and it becomes a 3 or 4 click for the employee. And then on the back end for us, we're basically just reviewing everything and just clicking, yes, everything is good. And the system automatically approves then everything and sets everything up for payroll, sets it up on the employee profile, et cetera. So it automates everything. In the past, whether it was on paper or even, like I said, 10 years ago, we still had to go one by one, even though it was electronically, and sort of just set up every employee profile with the new benefits for the following year. So now everything's already processed. So the minute everything is approved in that system, everything gets attached to a future date. So basically, if you're going by calendar year, your elections for 1/1 of next year, I've already selected. And so once that calendar flips over, that's going to be the automatic new election.
Yep.
And that's going to be the automatic new benefits for you. So I know, boring, but it just saves us a ton of time in the back
But
end.
it changed your work, right? I mean, if
Yeah.
you think about how you would have done that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, before these HRISs, HR information
Paper.
systems came about. Yeah.
Paper. I mean, when I started in HR back in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, like it was all on paper. And I worked in an organization that had over 4,000 employees. So I remember this correctly. Every time we had open enrollment, it was at least 5 or 6 pieces of paper per employee. So
Wow.
times 4,000, exactly. It was a nightmare. And we had the window of open enrollment. Once that closed and we got all the paperwork back, we had basically 1 month to go over 4,000 plus employee papers. So about 20,000 pages, take one or the other, to go through, to then input that into the HRIS that we had at the time, which was not something that you could scan and like, oh, it's gonna pop up everything. No, I literally had to sit there. I remember I had this little thing that I would put my papers on and I would just look at it and type everything into the computer. And
That's
then, all right,
crazy.
next, type,
I mean,
election.
by today's standards, that's nuts, but that's how it was.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's how it was. So yeah. So what other types of automations do you use?
Once I accepted the fact that automations weren't going to hurt me in some way, or that they were a good thing and that this was how things were. So I started looking around. So at our tools that we used back then, I was just over marketing. My company bought this cool tool, this engagement marketing tool called Pardot. So it had a lot of associations, automations associated with it that we could use. And of course, I decided I'm going to experiment with this, right? It has lots of different things you could do. So I started out with a realization. That was that we have 60,000 contacts in there. I cannot personally assess 60,000 contacts to decide if they're good leads, if they need to be followed up with. I don't want my marketing and my sales team wasting time following up with leads that have no chance of becoming a client, right? We have very limited resources. We want to focus it on, possibilities, the most likely possibilities. That's 60,000. I can't process that without automation, without some way to judge it. So one of my interns actually helped me with this at the time. They had a function called lead grading and scoring. So we took a little class on it. We set it up. We just took their advice on how to set it up. It basically judges your leads based on how much they've interacted with your company. Have they visited your website? Did they fill out a form? Did they attend an event? All of this stuff like adds or detracts from their score. And then their score translates into a grade like school. And then it prioritized all of the 60,000 leads and just showed the ones that were most likely to benefit from our services. I couldn't have done that. It did it in, minutes, and it does it live. It keeps doing it. Every new lead that comes in, I get this grade and the score of how likely we are to be a good fit for them. It's not about selling to them or something like that. It's about, are we going to be good partners together? Is this going to work? Are we going to mutually benefit each other business to business? So that worked. And, the automation is set up, it runs, it's great. Then we started moving to other automations inside of there. Like we have automations to build lists, and I can have an automation running that anytime somebody gets entered into the system that works for a transportation company, it adds them to this list because we know they work for a transportation company. We know we have some use cases for transportation. And so they will automatically get added to this list. They will get sent stuff about that topic and about that industry. It's all very cool. And it's all because of automation. All of it happens automatically. It does so much work. I have a very small staff. I have very limited resources for both marketing and sales. So it's just enabled everything. And again, I'm in control of all of it. It's all based on my criteria, on what my decisions, and the automation just takes action. The thing it gave me data. So just the automations running, doing the things I've asked it to do all night, all day, all weekend, doesn't need a break, doesn't need a vacation, all of those things. It just gave me data. And then I knew what to do based on that data. Now I'm making smarter decisions, making smarter decisions for my team. I'm making smarter decisions for the company because I know not just about that person, but what types of people are coming to the website, what types of people are looking for our business, all of those things. And the data just empowered me, right? This quote has been, my next quote has been credited to a lot of people. I've heard, this is not the first time most of you have probably heard this, but I saw it credited to Jim Barksdale. And he said, if we have data, let's look at data. If we have opinions, let's go with mine. So one of my favorite quotes there too. I would rather look at data. I would rather have automation running, pushing me data so we can make smart choices. So this automation and that tool led me to start embracing it in other tools. Like the marketing team, we set up a ticketing system. So anyone in the company can put in a ticket with marketing to get a project done. I mean, do you just need a logo? Do you need a really cool email signature? Anybody can request anything from marketing through a ticketing system. It goes straight to the marketing coordinator. She pushes it straight to another ticketing system that's connected. It takes it straight to the graphic designers or the videographer, whoever might, be the assigned work person for that. It all flows back through. It's fantastically automated and has a great workflow to it. Love it. It's enabled us. I think every year they go up, but if I'm not mistaken, in last year, I think they did 800 tickets in the ticketing system. It may have been up to 900 last year. It was an amazing amount of work they've done. It's just automatically makes everything flow really well. So, and of course, AI is just making this, like I said, I embrace AI. I was one of the first ones at the company to get Microsoft Copilot added to my account. I don't know if anybody knows what Copilot is. It's a little AI bot that plugs into all of your Microsoft apps and helps you do stuff. So if you're in Excel, you could ask it, how do I do a formula that sums up all of these things and divides by whatever, and it'll give you the formula. If you're in Outlook, you can, like, I'm trying to respond to an email. I tend to be very blunt with my emails, not rude, just blunt. Like, I'll just be very straightforward. I'll be like, here's the answer to your question, and not put a lot of pleasantries in it. But it helps me kind of do that because I'll type in what I'm going to type, and then I'm like, click on Copilot, make this better. And it actually makes the email a lot more pleasant and nice. The AI tools and plugins do stuff like that. And I find those incredibly helpful on my day-to-day. You can also use it to summarize things. I think Acrobat has one inside. I also got a license to that inside of their Acrobat PDF. You can use it to summarize contracts and documents. I love that AI tool.
Yeah, AI has actually given us a lot of benefit in not just only automation, but really in our day-to-day working tasks. I mean, from the examples that you mentioned, just Excel spreadsheets, and I'm terrible at them, and I have to look at them and exploit them really every day. And to me, it's been a fantastic addition and Copilot to that. But then to your point about emails, I'm more of that fluffy kind of a writer. I'm not so blunt. I'm blunt when I want to be. But with Copilot now integrated in my email. I just tell it I want to say this in a nice way, and it'll just write something kind of like the way I would write it, but a little bit better. So I'm not gonna I'm not gonna complain.
Yeah.
But I feel like the integration of AI into my role, like you, I appreciate AI probably more than most people, most leaders in the HR space, because I see it for what it truly is for me, is a companion to the work that I do on a day-to-day basis. I don't see it as my forefront, but
Yeah.
if I'm writing some sort of new policy, or if I want to write something out and I have the idea of what I want to write out, I have maybe a body that I've written already, I can go ask it, hey, could you proofread this for me?
Expand this. Yeah.
Expand this. Like, what would you add? What would you take away? Could you make it sound more professional? Like, and I give it those boundaries, because that's the end game of what I want in that scenario. But I feel like it gives me an additional tool for my tool belt that I can use beyond what I have. And, to talk about 10 years ago, what we used to have and what we didn't have this. We didn't have anything that would even come remotely close to what we have now. We had coworkers that you would probably write your document and go to them and say, hey, could you proofread this for me? And, not to take anything away from anybody, but 90% of the time, everybody would tell you, oh yeah, it looks great. Or, oh, hey, I just changed this other word, and that's it. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but we're not computers. At the end of the day, we are human beings. We have everybody's different. Everybody has their attention span, if you will, or their to-do list. So when you go to them, they might not necessarily have the bandwidth to maybe check that document out. Now you have an AI assistant that can do that for you, and you're not bothering anybody. So that to me, I'm with you. I'm 100% on your side on this when it comes to what AI does for me and my role and my team's role. I view it as a benefit. I view it as something that, carefully used, it can be a very, very powerful tool to our everyday.
I think you've made some very good points, carefully used. And then, I would never just ask it to spit something out and stick that in a document. Like I use it as a step. It kind of keeps me from the blank page syndrome. Like, you need to write something and you even have some of it in your head, but you look at the blank page and like getting it started. Sometimes it can help you kind of get it started, and then it flows, like it starts flowing. It's just the creative workflow. I was a creative in marketing. So, that first little bit sometimes is the hardest for the creative person or a writer to get into.
Yeah. So with that, I want to ask you, and this, I'm going to throw you a curveball here, but
the
use of AI and these new tools, before we go, like, what advice would you have to somebody who might be on the fence as a leader, who might be thinking, maybe I should use this, maybe I should not? I think I've made a very good case about it, but what about you? What can you maybe tell that leader that might be on the fence of whether to use AI as a tool or not?
I would say just be careful. I recently heard somebody say, if your company doesn't have an AI policy, it really should. If your company doesn't have one, maybe, and you're really interested in it, like, help them write one, help them get, like, you can find some examples out there of what other people are doing. It's all evolving very quickly. But if you don't think your people at your company are using AI, you're wrong. They are using it. Most of your employees are using it right now. And so write that policy, get something down for the proper way to use it and the proper expectations of it. Okay. The second is just try it, give it a shot, see what it's like. Learning how to write prompts into the AI engine is a whole other thing. I got into that quickly. Like, my first few times were like clumsy, and like, you got some good results, but it was okay. Sometimes my prompts are this long, and they're 1,000-word prompts to get something out, but I know what I want and I want to give it all the parameters, right? And what I get out is exactly pretty much what I want. Garbage in, garbage out. You got to know what you're asking for. You can't just go, because in the end, I mean, the AI is stupid. It's not smart. It's only what goes into it, what's smart, and the stuff it pulls from. It's where it comes from. So I would say, don't be afraid. Experiment with it. help your company write a policy around it, and you're not going to know how to write the policy unless you experiment with it. Talk to the people you work with. I guarantee they're using it, and explore with it. Explore automations too. I don't think people are using automations as much as they are AI. There's ways to automate your workflows using AI and not using AI. And I think it's just going to make your life better, releasing some of the day-to-day monotony that you can release with automation and with AI. I mean, I'm a big proponent of all of it. Are there problems? Yeah. I mean, there's pitfalls. There's ways it can go wrong. You probably need to be a little bit more careful than I'm making it sound like. But again, with the policies, like you just got to kind of put up guardrails for yourself, for other people. I do highly recommend, I subscribe to a private AI. I don't use ChatGPT or one of the public ones. It's more of a siloed AI that we pay a subscription for that's like closed off. So our stuff isn't getting pushed out to the internet. One of the big fears of AI is if you're using just a free public one, the information you put in is then being pushed out to other people to use. And so people are afraid you could be putting corporate secrets out there, things your company doesn't want other people to know, and then things like that. So, and I did some experimenting. I went to one of the public AI things, and I searched for our competitors and asked it what their marketing strategies were. And it actually gave me back some results that said, this company's marketing strategy for this year is to focus on this and this and this. Now, I mean, I don't know where it got that information. I don't know how accurate it was, if it was just imagining or having a hallucination. When AI makes something up or misinterprets something, they call it an AI hallucination. So that could have been happening, or they could have had that information out there publicly and I just accessed it. It's a little unclear as to what happened there. But it had pretty clear answers when I asked what all of our competitors' marketing strategies were.
And that's part of the guardrails, right? That's some of those guardrails that if you're going to write a AI policy, those are some of the things that you should probably incorporate as one of your top 5 items to put on that is to not use public AIs, et cetera, and make sure that you're not inputting company information into it. Because like Melinda said, we still don't know if you're using a free public AI, what information is putting out there about what the information you're inputting into it. So just be careful. But with that, we'd like to thank Melinda Louder again for joining us on ASCII Anything to talk about automation and leadership. So Melinda, thanks again for joining. This has been great.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening into this week's edition of ASCII Anything presented by Motion Consulting. We hope you enjoyed listening to Melinda Louder talk to us about automation and leadership. Be sure to join us next time as we dive even deeper with our resident experts and what they're currently working on. Don't forget to share your ideas or topics with us on social media. In the meantime, please remember to give us a rating and subscribe to our feed wherever you get your podcasts. Until then, happy St. Paddy's Day. So long, everybody.